Welcome to Go Vote Omaha, presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. I'm Geri Simon, a League member and your host. Each program, we talk about issues that are important for elections. We hope to inspire you to talk about those same issues. And most important, when election time comes, we want to help you be ready and willing to go vote. Recently in the news, and we've been reading a lot about immigrants, particularly Muslim immigrants from Syria and other nations. And we decided that we knew that a lot of us don't know a whole lot about Muslims or Islam, and so that's what we're going to talk about this evening. Our guest to do that with us is Dr. Ramazan Kilinc. He's the co-director of the Islamic Studies Program at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Welcome, Dr. Kilinc.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. First of all, tell us a little bit about your background and then about the Islamic Studies Center at UNO.
Sure. I'm an associate professor of political science and co-director of Islamic Studies Program at UNO. I teach courses on the Middle East and Islam and politics. I'm originally from Turkey, born and raised in Turkey. I came to the United States 13 years ago for my graduate degree. I got my PhD education from Arizona State University, and I had a big move from Arizona to Michigan and taught at Michigan State University for 3 years. And I've been in Omaha, Nebraska in the last 5 years. Islamic Studies Program was established about 10 years ago to increase knowledge on Islam and Muslims at the UNO community and the broader Omaha community as well. We have a minor degree for undergraduate students. Our faculty conduct research on Islam and Muslims, and we organize lectures, conferences, and other outreach programs to inform our community on the issues related to Islam or Muslims, religion, and the people.
Okay. And is this a unique program? Are there other universities close by that have programs similar?
There are other universities which have this program, but in terms of our location, I think we are unique because we are the only Islamic Studies program from Denver to Chicago to Minneapolis, probably. So we are proud of that for that reason as well.
Okay. Well, we wanted to, as I said, we want to educate our viewers and realize that there's not a lot of knowledge for most of us about Islam or Muslims. And so could you give us, our viewers, a quick overview, knowing that we can't go into a lot of depth about Islam?
Sure. It's a very broad question, of course,
yes.
Not easy to answer in a few minutes, but let me try my best.
Okay.
Islam started in early 7th century in Mecca in present-day Saudi Arabia. It developed from a Judeo-Christian tradition. There are many continuities between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Muslims believe that God sent his revelation, Quran, to Prophet Muhammad. The Quran tells Muslims to worship one God. They consider the earlier prophets like Moses, Jesus, they consider Jesus as a prophet, along with Moses, Abraham, Noah. So there are lots of similarities in that regard, and they also recognize the books revealed to the previous prophets. And they believe in a day of judgment, which is common in many religious traditions. And observant Muslims practice 5 pillars of Islam, like orally declaring their faith, praying 5 times a day, fasting in the daylight hours of the month of Ramadan for about a month every year, giving a share of their income for charity, and making a pilgrimage to Mecca, where Islam first originated, at least once in their lifetime if they can afford it. Those are the 5 pillars of Islam. Okay. And Muslims also observe some dietary rules similar to Judaism. For example, they also don't eat pork. And there are 2 major Muslim festivals. One is Eid al-Fitr, which comes after, it is sometimes called fast-breaking festival. So it comes after the month of Ramadan. And the other one is Eid al-Adha, or the festival of sacrifice, which takes place during the month of the pilgrimage. So is this fair enough? Or
Yes, thank you.
Brief, yeah.
And the other similarities, I mean, there is a day of worship for Muslims, is that?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Even though Muslims are expected to pray 5 times a day, there is a congregational prayer, which you need to go to a mosque and do on Fridays, on Friday after Friday a little bit after noon. So That's the congregational prayer that also needs to be conducted at mosque. The 5 daily prayers are individual. You can do it in your office, in your home, but that particular weekly congregation is done on Fridays.
Okay. And in both the Christian and Judaic traditions, those faiths, for Christians, certainly there are different churches, there are different Reformed, Orthodox, Judaism. How about in Islam? Are there different sects within that are similar, like a church within Islam?
Sure, there are many different groups, but the major divide among Muslims is Sunnis versus Shias that we have been hearing a lot over the media. But this difference is more political, less theological. This doesn't mean that there are theological divides between them. There are, but in terms of general practices, for example, in terms of the Islam that I have already mentioned, the prayers, pillars, they are exactly the same. They have the same belief structure, but their difference came from, and they have coexisted together for so long, but their difference came from the divide emerged after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, because after his death, there were disputes around who would lead the community, fast-growing Muslim community. Some believe that the new leader should be chosen based on the community consensus. And the others believe that the leadership should go through the descendants of the Prophet Muhammad. Prophet Muhammad didn't have sons, but he had son-in-law. So Shias basically believe that the leadership, political leadership, should have gone through Prophet's son-in-law and their descendants. Sunnis basically believe that it should have gone through the community consensus at the time. So the Prophet's closer friend, Abu Bakr, became the caliph after him. And Ali, who was the son of the Prophet, who was the son-in-law of the Prophet, he eventually became caliph as well as the 4th caliph of Islam. But those differences divided Muslims in the later period. So that's the main reason for the divide. There are other groups like Sufis, for example, but it's not at the same level. Sufis are people who focus more on spiritual experience, more than legalistic, practical things. But they can be both Shias or Sunnis. And about 85% of Muslims are Sunnis, and maybe 15% Shias. Of course, there are other very minor groups, but in general, I now have a really big, broad brush, so I may have some generalizations. So this is the major divides, Shias and Sunnis. But of course, there are lots of Islamic movements, groups along different social and political lines. So it's really a very diverse group of people, from a very extremist ones, as we always hear, to a very progressive one. So there is a wide diversity among Muslims as well.
That's very similar to within Christianity. You find the same gamut of diverse views, a little bit different, more conservative, more liberal. So there's similarities there that people can understand. Well, we hear so much about people vilifying Muslims and calling the faith one of evil or violence, and that women are mistreated and not valued, and the Quran promotes hate. Can you talk about, debunking some of these sayings, thoughts?
Sure. Of course, we hear those types of rhetoric all the time. Quran is a religious text sent by God. I personally think that there is no violent text, but there are violent people who can get violent interpretations from the text. The text can be a source of prayer, peace, worship, charity, but the same text can be a source of killing, hatred, bigotry. I think that's we should mostly focus on the people. Most of the vast majority of Muslims see the same text as source of peace, charity, and prayer. But there are, obviously, we shouldn't dismiss that there is an extremism problem in the Muslim world as well. There are people who claim to be Muslim, who claim to subscribe to Quranic message, and at the same time kill people, oppress women, and so forth. So we have those, but among the major Islamic scholars, there is really no single voice who have actually approved the message of ISIS, for example, the radical group. So they are really marginal, but they are, of course, heard more because they make noise. I think another point that we need to understand those groups, those extremist groups, is we need to consider the social, political, economic causes of extremism as well. Mm-hmm. It's not like this. There are a group of Muslims, they came together, they start reading Quran, and based on that, they start killing people. That's not what it really is. What it really is there are people who have grievances coming from social, economic, political issues, and they are determined to be violent because of those grievances. They are very politicized, radicalized because of them. And then to justify their acts, they go back to Quran and find verses without paying any attention to their context, just piggy-picking, and then they use it as to justify their acts. So the solution is twofold. Well, on the one hand, we should probably emphasize the textual interpretations which are peaceful, but on the other hand, we should also focus on removing the social, political, economic issues that make people radical, I guess. So it is twofold. In terms of women, maybe I can say a few words as well,
yes,
because
please.
It's one of the biggest issues that is taught.
Absolutely.
First of all, unfortunately, we see lots of problems related to gender inequality in the Muslim world. This is a solid reality. There is a lot that needs to be addressed. Muslims should be unapologetic about it, and they should focus on improving the status of Muslims. And I consider myself as a feminist in that regard. We have a lot to do. But I think we should also be careful in blaming necessarily religion on this. Mm-hmm. Most of the problems are rooted in social patriarchal relations. So patriarchy is the real problem, but it is sometimes presented with religion. People use religion as well. When you interpret religion from a patriarchal lens, you read from that angle, and it also that's where religion probably comes. But if we look at religion from a historical point of view, for example, if we look at Quran, or if we look at what Quran brought to women historically, we see that it was really a very emancipatory, a very revolutionary message when it first came, because Quran gave women the right to property, and at that time, I'm talking about 7th century, mm-hmm. the right to get inheritance. These are the issues that we saw in many of the Western countries in 18th, 19th century. So it was, when the message first came, it was revolutionary, it was very progressive in its own era, but we still see people, Muslims as well, of course, as I mentioned, there is a problem of gender inequality which needs to be addressed, and we see sometimes Muslims who read the same Quran which brought that revolutionary message 14 centuries ago, and still force women to live in a particular lifestyle. Mm-hmm. For example, for veiling, of course, veiling, some women veil because of their own choice, but also sometimes that's not necessarily the case, as we see in countries like Saudi Arabia. So that really bothers me. I think we need to understand the emancipatory spirit in the text and focus more on that. But I think again, this brings up to my earlier point. There is a progressive or more oppressive people which they can read the text the way that they wish, and I think that's one we need to focus more.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Muslims in this country, and certainly Muslim citizens accept our constitutional principle of the separation of church and state. But you often hear people say Muslims want to supplant our law with Sharia law. Mm-hmm. So could you talk about that? What is Sharia law? And explain why some in this country seem so convinced that that's the intent of Muslims.
Thank you. It's an important question, I guess. Most Americans see Sharia as an Islamic legal system characterized by misogyny, intolerance, and harsh punishments. And to be honest, they have some reason to think so, because unfortunately, we have seen people who used corporal punishments. We have seen some Islamic militant groups, places like Afghanistan, Somalia, Syria. We have seen some governments like Saudi Arabia who have also understood Sharia the same way that many Americans are feared. So there is some basis on that. I'm not blaming people only, but this is not what many Muslims around the world understands Sharia. The Sharia in Arabic literally means a path to be followed. So the term is really broad. It encompasses a personal moral code and a religious law at the same time. So it covers personal and collective spheres of daily life. And maybe we can combine what it covers in three categories. Okay. First, beliefs. Second, character. And third, actions. So, and its substance is driven by Quran and Prophet Muhammad's life, which Muslims call Sunnah. But the belief component is about, it commands Muslims to believe in God, angels, prophets, books, Day of Judgment, which I've already mentioned. Mm-hmm. In terms of character, it commands Muslims to strive for traits like humility, kindness, avoid traits like lying or gossiping. That's the character part of it. And in actions, it asks Muslims to have prayers, fasting, pilgrimage, and also actions relating to social relations, like laws, marriage, crime, business, which people usually understand Sharia as only that. So it's really a very big concept for Muslims. So, but there are violent groups and authoritarian states in the Muslim world who leave the manners, character part of the Sharia aside and focus on actions, which is not. Also, within actions, they focus on some harsh punishment type of thing. In that regard, our radicals are on the same page with those who are feared of Sharia here, with really a more aggressive agenda. So they think similarly, I think. Okay. They both forget the broader meaning of Sharia. And if we come back to the debates in the United States about banning Sharia, I think these are unnecessary debates. It just politicizes the issue, and it increases polarization, which actually prevents mutual understanding and dialogue further. And it only increases polarization and marginalizes people. There may be some marginal groups, marginal people here and there who might want Sharia or whatever they call. But the vast majority of American Muslims are law-abiding citizens, and they are respectful to the laws in the United States without any intention to change them. But I should also say that to many Muslims, I see that way, many of the US laws are already in line with Sharia based on the broader definition that I have already given. Okay. And probably they are in line with Sharia more than any Muslim country in the world, because if you look at rule of law, justice, equality, most of the people will probably prefer to be tried in a US court than sometimes. Sometimes. So, I mean, when you think of Sharia broadly, you will see that there are lots of laws already in line with it. Exactly. So it's about justice and equality. Because
then there's no intent to change the American statutes of law, the Constitution.
That's right. Okay. That's right. Also, banning Sharia means banning religion at all. I mean, banning Sharia, I mean, not in terms of having laws. Of course, I'm also as Muslims here, we are living in the United States and respectful to the laws, and we participate in the political process within the law, within the lines drawn by the Constitution, for sure. But if Sharia means the path to follow, and if it includes beliefs, prayers, and everything, politicizing it actually can lead us to really lots of misunderstanding and mutual distrust, which.
So leading to a religious discrimination is what you're saying too,
exactly.
Which this country, that's
exactly.
one of our founding principles: no establishment of religion, and everyone's free to practice whichever religion, or no religion if they wish.
Exactly. But if we understand Sharia the way that those critics understand, of course, it is not many Muslims would also agree with. So that's not the issue for them.
So how much of the negative view of Islam and Muslims in this country and such talk is fear-driven, and the unfortunate tendency of people to want to blame someone else for problems or issues, and for a group or belief system that they really don't understand.
Yeah, I think much of the problem is, as you described, it is mostly fear-driven because this is the easiest. If you do so, you don't need to do research, you don't need to understand people, you don't need to understand the root causes of the problems that we are having, you don't need to understand why we have this violence in the Middle East. So you don't need to do research, it's very easy. These people are bad, this is why we are having. So that's the easiest, and most of us don't have time or motivation to learn more and to get the burden probably within our own busy agenda. So I agree, but it's also a very common tendency to blame others for the problems. As I mentioned, it is the easiest. This is especially the case if your convictions are about others, in this case Islam or Muslims, are based on the assumptions that you get from media. Because then the problem doubles. I'm not blaming on media here because in its very nature, media should focus on violence. Media should focus on uncommon things, right? Not, we are talking here about faith, Islam, Muslims right now. This is probably not something a media could interested, but if we are attacked by someone, at this point, probably most of the media will pay attention. Mm-hmm. So it's very normal that I'm not blaming media being biased. They are doing their job. But if we shape our convictions, if we shape our assumptions or knowledge about Muslims just based on that selective reading, mm-hmm. that's the problem. That's, I think, the trap that many Americans are getting into because their understanding of Islam or Muslims is fed only by media. The solution then, I think, is increasing platforms to interact with Muslims, so increasing platforms to open dialogue, to know one another better. So for that reason, I would like to thank you for inviting me. I think this is one of those. Pew Research, it's, as you know, it's a very leading survey group, and their research has shown that those people who have ever met a Muslim have far more favorable views toward Muslims than those who have never met a Muslim. Mm-hmm. So I think as we increase interaction, as we prevent that people's convictions are based on only bad examples that is heard from media, then we can create more opportunities for mutual understanding, and then people will probably have a better understanding of Islam and Muslims. I think we should increase these kinds of engagements.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Muslims in Omaha. About how many do you know are in Omaha itself, and how many mosques do we have?
Okay, as far as I know, because the numbers there are really different numbers, so it is difficult to get an exact number, but it is estimated that there are about 5,000 Muslims living in Omaha. Okay. And we have a diverse group of people from several countries, races, ethnic and linguistic backgrounds. Probably Muslims are probably the most diverse faith group in, I don't know, in Omaha. I don't know, this is a claim, but I guess if you go to an Islamic center of Omaha on a Friday prayer, for example, you will see it is really, really diverse. Probably it is not easy to get that diverse groups in a church. Maybe there are churches which are that diverse. So we have American-born Muslims, born and raised here. Mm-hmm. We have African-American Muslims. Omaha is actually important for the Black Muslim experience because it is the birthplace of Malcolm X, who is an important figure for Black Muslim history. And we have people coming from Central Asia, Tajikistan, Afghanistan. We have a really big community from these two countries. We have people coming from Middle East, Arab countries, Iran, Turkey, a few. And we have people who came as refugees, like Somalians, Bosnians in Omaha. People who came here to study and stayed here as professionals, most of them being medical doctors and engineers. So it's really a diverse community, and we have 5 mosques here, some of them smaller, but one big mosque and 4 other smaller ones. And ICO Islamic Center of Omaha is the biggest, and there is a new mosque being constructed as part of the Tri-Faith Campus, American Muslim Institute. They have smaller one right now, and there are 3 more. And Omaha has been at the national news, not for good reasons. Islamic Center of Omaha was attacked a few times, not only once. But we also have reasons to become optimistic because Omaha has been in the national news for good news as well. Our Tri-Faith initiative, which we have, which is really unique in the nation, has been also covered by national media a few times. So.
And the Tri-Faith initiative, do you want to just talk real briefly about what the Tri-Faith initiative is?
Sure. Tri-Faith initiative is a project in which a mosque, a synagogue, and a church, they decided to have the same campus. So it's easy to share their parking lot. I think this is the most important benefit of it because you have in Tri-Faith, because Muslims pray on Fridays, Jews on Saturdays, and Christians on Sundays.
Right.
There is a big shared parking lot. But beyond that, I think it brings people together. Having such a big campus, because it's in a big campus, there will be a church, a synagogue, and a mosque, and a fourth building, which they call Tri-Faith building, in which they will do events to promote interfaith dialogue. So having such a project in itself requires lots of interaction, right? Lots of interfaith friendships. And achieving that, and what we can see after that, will contribute to that mutual understanding. So it is really a very unique project, and I think it will make Omaha an important city in the United States as well, because there are some examples, but not this big, not this comprehensive. So it will probably become a unique national place to see by many people.
Okay.
So.
Well, thank you so much. We're out of time, but I hope you might come back and answer some questions for us in a later time.
Sure, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. For the League of Women Voters, I'm Geri Simon, reminding you to inform yourself about the issues, and on Election Day, go vote, Omaha.